Live from the Bob Levy Broadcast Center, overlooking the Toms River, it's time to get up, get out, do something. Wake up with Jeremy Grunin. Be a part of the show, 732-505-1160. News Talk Radio WOBM AM 1160 and 1310. Listen online at WOBMAM.com.
Yeah, so 607, 40 degrees, getting to 45 and rainy, February 23rd. WOBM AM 1160, 1310 News Talk Radio, streaming live at WOBMAM.com and on the Radio Pup app, 732-505-1160 to join the conversation. So, in the break, Zach and I were, a little more behind the scenes at Wake Up with Jeremy Grunin. We had a very deep philosophical conversation of the whole Batman versus Superman thing. At first glance, it would appear that Superman has the clear advantage because, he's super and he's, strong. And Batman's really just a person wearing a suit. But then we're like, wait, but Batman's rich, and Batman could probably go make some kryptonite, which we know would beat Superman. I don't know the answer to this. All I do know is that Pam Ward, the executive director of the Algonquin Arts Theater in Manasquan, is on the phone with us. Good morning, Pam.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm great. Pam, do you want to weigh in on the Batman versus Superman thing?
Well, I have I think a deeper philosophical question, which is why are Batman and Superman fighting against each other?
See,
I need some clarity on this because it doesn't really seem to make all that much sense to me.
That's a good question, but I think what happened, and I don't know for a fact because the movie has not been released, and God knows I haven't read anything. I believe that there's some kind of devious villain in the background that somehow manages to manipulate the situation and pit them against each other. It's horrible.
No, it is horrible. That's why I think I'm having a real problem wrapping my head around the whole idea of this. So, as personal preference, I kind of lean more towards the dark and brooding side of heroism. So I'm going to have to go with Batman.
Well, you are clearly. I think you ended up in the camp where Zach ended up. So great job, Pam. So Pam, enough of this discussion about superheroes because that's not realistic. Let's talk about real life. Let's talk about the Algonquin. So,
oh yes, and that is real life at its best.
Absolutely. So why don't you tell our listeners? Why don't you give them the quick elevator story about the Algonquin Theater? What's it all about? What's going on there? Start us off.
Well, the Algonquin is actually, it is located on Main Street in Manasquan, and it has actually been there since 1938. But when it opened, it was a first-run film house, and it stayed a first-run film house up into the mid-'70s when competition got a little tougher, when the multiplex was introduced, and so it kind of fell on hard times. Then it ran into a second-run film house, and it finally closed altogether in 1981. And then it was just vacant for about a decade. And then two couples purchased it with the idea in mind of refurbishing it as a combination film house and live performance theater. So there was a major renovation undertaken in 1992. And it reopened in 1994 as the Algonquin Performing Arts Center. And it's been pretty much a live performing arts center since then. It has had there has been a strong presence of film in its programming, but it was mostly a presenting house. So acts would be booked in from a variety of different companies, regionally, nationally. And then ultimately, around 2009, 2010, they began to transition from a presenting house into actually a producing house. So now about 90% of the programming that happens is our theater productions that are produced in-house by our resident directors, actors, and designers.
So are you saying a lot of that is original, or are you saying that it's like that it's a reproduction of an original?
It is a reproduction of an original. We don't do all that. I would love to see that happen over the next few years, but we don't originate too much work. We produce relatively well-known theatrical pieces. For instance, within the next few weeks, The King and I will be opening. But rather than us hiring the King and I to come in as a part of a tour from another theater. It's actually produced right in-house.
So you have a kind of a core of actors and actresses, performers who are consistently performing. Is that how it works? Do you have or is there a steady flow of new talent coming in?
There's always new talent coming in. I think it's sort of an inevitability that you gather sort of generationally, I guess. You get a core of people together who are there for a period of time. But one of the great things about this location is that there are always new people. There are always talented people who are coming through. We also have a very large education department, and we make a real commitment to young emerging artists and, people who are pre-professional working with people who are professional actors, and making sure that there's always a good mix of people so that everybody is having a learning experience, really very much steeped in an educational philosophy within the theater. So it's, I would say it's a combination of those two things. We have a core of people that we work with a lot of the time, but there are always new people who are coming in and joining us.
Right. I know I went to see, I guess, Hairspray.
Yeah.
And it was amazing because the female lead was, I believe, a music teacher at like Brick High School or something, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And she was amazing. And it's like you don't realize that that we have these folks all around the Jersey Shore who are, frankly, we're talking about superheroes, right? We're talking and so here's the segue. Zach, this worked out really well, by the way. That was really strong. So you have like these Clark Kent and like Bruce Wayne folks all around town who at night, take off of their work clothes and get into their costume and are amazing performers.
Absolutely. And they're not always just amazing performers. They're often amazing musicians, amazing designers, amazing carpenters. People bring so many different talents to the table, and a lot of times people don't even know that this is what they do, and they're very surprised by it. So that's a really, really fun element of it. And, much of the time we have a lot of people who are teachers, frankly, and there's always been this sensibility of, if you can't do it, you teach. And it's like, well, no, it's really hard to find really great teachers. So they're doing, what they do best during the day, and then they come in and they sing and they dance and they build and they paint and they design at other times. So it's just an amazingly sort of full spectrum of talents that they bring to the table. And also, we love teachers because there are so many programs that we have in education and young actors, so it's wonderful for them to be able to interact with teachers not only in the classroom but also on the stage.
Right. And you have a really kind of robust lineup, even as I look over the next couple of weeks. I mean, this weekend you have a Moon for the Misbegotten.
Yes.
Then next week is A Midsummer Night's Dream.
Yes.
10 Hairy Legs, who we all are big fans of.
Oh, good. Well, then come on down.
Short film series. I mean, it's a really nice. There's a Rodgers and Hammerstein seminar.
Yes.
I mean, so it's really just a fantastic kind of mix. And I always tell, it's funny, I always tell my wife and my kids, to take a look at the venues that we have locally, because you'd be shocked at some of the performances and the opportunities that we have right in our backyards.
Oh, I agree 100%. And, this is Monmouth County is incredibly rich with cultural arts centers. It's really kind of amazing how many there are in a very small area. And, there's really no end of things to get involved with, from a cultural or an arts standpoint.
All right. So, Pam, when we come back, I would love for you to talk some more about the educational program that you have, because it's really remarkable. One of the best, certainly, that I've seen in the area, and really a model for other performing arts venues to kind of take into consideration. So let's talk about that when we get back. Pam Ward, CEO I'm sorry, executive director. I can never get anybody's title right. Executive director of the Algonquin Arts Theater in Manasquan. Be right back.
Stay tuned for Preferred Company with Joel Markell and Marianne Levy at 8. Wake Up with Jeremy Grunin continues next. News Talk Radio WOBM AM 1160 and 1310.
We're back. Wake Up with Jeremy Grunin, WOBM AM 1160 and 1310, 622. Pam, did you notice, by the way, what we did there? We put a commercial on that actually said something about the Strand. Because
yes, I did notice that.
We were subliminally hoping that you would take that message and say, gosh, we should advertise here on WOBM AM with Wake Up with Jeremy Grunin because he seems like a swell guy, and it seems like it's really the thing to do is to hop on the bandwagon.
Well, there's no doubt that as soon as I get into the office this morning, my marketing and PR guy is going to be all over me for something that I said here. So I will definitely bring it up as a diversion.
Yeah, you send him my way. I'll talk to him. No problem.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
So Pam, so tell us what's going on with these educational programs because they are fantastic. I will tell you, the first time I met with folks at the Algonquin, there must have been like 1,000 children watching a show in the middle of the day. It's really, honestly, for me as somebody that's a huge supporter of the arts, that warms my heart. So tell me about the programs that you have.
It's been one of the core programs of the theater since its inception, that this was always really important that the theater be a place where people of all ages could come to learn about the arts and participate in the arts. So over the years, the education programs evolved to really cover sort of three very broad areas. And the first, what you saw, was a student matinee, which is a curriculum-based program. And we work with schools all over the area to come and actually see, for the most part, literature that has been adapted to the stage. So, and sometimes it's just dramatic literature. Coming up a little bit later in the month, as you had pointed out before, is A Midsummer Night's Dream, which is an hour-long abridged version, of course, of the Shakespearean play, and is an introduction to for young kids to Shakespeare, for it not to be intimidating to them or scary to them. And a major part of the student matinee program is the Page to Stage program, which brings students from all different schools to see plays that are specifically based on books. And part of that includes an artist trip to the classroom in their schools to actually introduce them to theater, introduce them to the story, and it culminates with a trip to the theater and receiving a copy of the book to, really point up the connections between the written word and the theatrical adaptations. So that's sort of the curricular element of the education program. Then there's the extracurricular, which is focused specifically on teaching theatrical disciplines. And we have many, many classes. We probably see about 1,500 students per month come to see matinees at the theater, and then about another 200 to 300 participate in after-school programming, extracurricular programming at the theater, and all of that is progressive, sequential education in music, theater, dance, and film. And then the sort of next tier would be our internship program and apprenticeship program, where students who are interested in a more intensive experience of theater and a little bit more immersive, high school students and college students can come in as interns, where they will spend time with us. For instance, we have a couple of interns now who are working on the administrative side of things, where they're working in marketing and they're working in technical theater, and they're having experiences in all different elements of the theater. So it's a very comprehensive program that's designed to, keep people engaged at every level.
Right.
Entrance points for people who have no experience, and then entrance points for people who are experienced and really want to intensify their education.
Okay, Pam, you're doing it. First of all, I'd like to say and I hope your marketing guys listening, because you're doing a fantastic job. So I'm
okay,
just it's my endorsement. So listen, we're up against another break because we have to pay the bills, and which is why we sell advertising to places like the Algonquin. But one of the things that I'd like to talk about.
Sell, Jeremy.
See what I did there? I just slid that in.
Yeah,
what
so
I'd like to
slip that right in.
What I'd like to talk about after the break, if you don't mind, is I'd like to hear a little bit about you. Right? How you got where you got. I'd like to hear what you would do if you had a magic wand and had the ability to make a change in one thing in your sector. Right?
Okay.
And then we'll talk about some fun upcoming stuff at the Algonquin. Pam Ward, Executive Director of the Algonquin Theater in Manasquan. She's with us. She'll be back with us after the break. Wake up with Jeremy Grunin.
The news never stops at WOBMAM.com. Get the latest from WOBM News, the Town Square, New Jersey News Network, and Fox News Radio. Wake up with Jeremy Grunin. News Talk Radio, WOBM AM 1160 and 1310. Live from Town Square Towers at the heart of the Jersey Shore. Wake up with Jeremy Grunin. Get up, get out, do something. Join the conversation. 732-505-1160. News Talk Radio, WOBM AM 1160 and 1310. Listen online at WOBMAM.com.
And we're back with Pam Ward, ED, Executive Director at the Algonquin in Manasquan. So, Pam, tell us a little about yourself. How did you? I know you've been at the Algonquin for a little over a year now.
That is correct.
And where did you come from before that?
Prior to that, I was actually running my own business. I was running a consulting firm for small nonprofit, particularly arts organizations. But prior to that, I had actually been working with the International House of Blues Foundation, which is the nonprofit branch of the House of Blues.
Oh, okay.
And so I had opened. There was a venue in Atlantic City, and then I went up and opened a venue in Boston. And then there were a number of unfortunate corporate takeovers, and the House of Blues wound up becoming actually Live Nation venues.
Right.
So nonprofit was not necessarily as important to them following that merger. So, and then prior to that, I was actually at Trinity Rep in Providence. But I started out in professional theater at the McCarter over in Princeton, many, many years ago.
So where was that aha moment for you that you were like, I love the theater, I love the arts, I love nonprofits, this is what I want to do? Do you remember when that kind of happened for you?
No, I don't.
No, that's not the way you're supposed to answer that question, Pam. You're supposed to have it's supposed to be some kind of epiphany that's supposed to enlighten us all, and we're supposed to feel good about it.
No, it really wasn't anything like that. I always say that this has been my entire career experience has sort of been like a free fall from a low flying plane. I started out doing any kind of performing only at, the order of my father, because I was a very, very, very shy child, never spoke to anybody, literally never spoke to anybody. And they finally basically marched me at gunpoint into a school choir so that I would do something. And they felt like, that was anonymous enough. I would be singing with a group of people, so I would feel comfortable enough and safe enough there, and that was it was a good choice because I was actually quite surprised to find that I could sing. But it wasn't there where I was like, oh, this is my calling. I'm going to be a performer. I was more of a writer, was always much more interested in writing and literature, and went to college as an English major. And it was sometime in college where I couldn't really divorce the written word from the spoken word, and they began to just seem that much more important to me. So I ultimately graduated with a theater arts degree and was really fortunate enough to find work in theater immediately out of school. And so it's been kind of a continuously evolving and very, very interesting career path. Anybody who wants to take an arts career path, get ready for an adventure, because you just don't ever know where it's going to go. And the one thing you don't ever want to tell anybody in theater is that you can write, because you will immediately be incorporated into the development department, and then there is no escape from administration.
Right.
So it's, and I, still perform, I still teach, I still do all those things, but also the administration of it has always been really, really fascinating to me. And so that's where I find that my naturally introverted personality is most comfortable.
So see what you did there, though. So you kind of you didn't totally nail my aha moment question, right? Which is one of my go-to questions that I really feel good about. And, it's usually supposed to bring a little tear to somebody's eye. But what you did do is you rolled in the success story of shy kid, finds the arts, comes out of her shell, and now is running a large a pretty good sized organization here at the Jersey Shore. So that was good the way you kind of bailed that one out.
Yeah. Oh, it is the I will never ever say anything other than it is my experience in the arts, whether it was learning to play piano or learning to sing with a group or learning to sing as a soloist or getting up on stage acting for the first time, all incredibly formative experiences and changed a lot of things for me. But I never had that moment where I was like, this is my calling. I never had that sort of sensibility because I never really thought of the arts as being separate from everything else. I mean, there were so many things that I'm interested in and active in that I take the skill set that I learned in the arts and apply it.
Well, that's
so, and when I see a lot of people, I love to deal with salespeople. I like talking to attorneys. All of these people who do things that involve the type of skill sets that you find in theater. But aren't necessarily related to it. So I think it's sort of a more holistic, integrated sort of an experience for me.
Yeah, no, that's great, and I think you're kind of putting an exclamation on the point that we make a lot here on the show, which is that an education in the arts, learning the arts, using the arts as kind of one of the things that defines you as you're growing up, as you're going through the educational experience, doesn't mean that you ultimately end up in the arts. It means that you're learning a set of skill sets that will be transferable to a number of different opportunities as you move through life, and you're kind of a living example of that. So Pam, give me real quick. One of the things we like to ask is if you had an ability to impact one thing with a magic wand that you could kind of change in your sector or make better or make different, what would that be? Do you have something like that you wish you could kind of do if you could just kind of, shake your nose at it?
If you mean like if I could be the boss of everything?
That would be cool, yeah.
Yes. One of the things that I would do is within my sector, sort of internally, really get everybody to try and understand that every single element of the work is creative, that it isn't that the artists get up on stage and they're creative. Every single part of the administration of the arts, the implementation of the arts, and the creation of the work involves amazing levels of creativity. And that, we really need to bring that to work with us every day. Anybody that has ever crafted a not-for-profit budget knows it requires amazing creativity. So, this idea that it's sort of like the artists, sort of like what we started talking about at the very, very beginning of the show, Superman versus Batman, the artists versus the administrators, who has the power, who has control. It isn't that at all. It's a completely collective, creative team that's required to take a theater and make it sustainable and to make it strong and to make it impactful, as opposed to the way it's often viewed, which is, who is important in the theater, the artists are important, or this is important, or this is really the focus of the work. It's not true. It has to be a completely integrated company in order for it to be as strong as it can possibly be. And I think that there tends to be, and, you find it even when you're sitting or you're writing a grant or you're under consideration for certain things, people will say, oh, well, I'll fund a program, but I'm not paying for administration.
Right.
And it's like, well, I don't know what you think, you can do there, because it is a critical part of the infrastructure of the creation of the work, and that's what I would wave my magic wand at.
Well, that is a great thing that you're talking about there, because certainly for me as a funder at a foundation, we certainly have a strong understanding of that, and that's kind of what we do. And I think that everybody needs to understand that, just because you're saving money on overhead or administration doesn't mean that the organization's running better.
Right.
What ultimately ends is the net dollars. What ultimately matters is the net dollars that you're able to raise for a not-for-profit, not what percentage of dollars end up coming down to the bottom line. Pam, we're just about out of time. So if somebody wanted to learn more about the Algonquin, where would they go? Where could they find out more?
The best and most comprehensive source is our website at algonquinarts.org. That pretty much has our entire calendar, and it has an overview of all of the programming that we offer. So I would always encourage, anybody that wants to find out about what's happening, the website is always a good shot. They could also give a call to our box office, which is 732-528-9211, and our lovely box office staff will be happy to answer a lot of the questions that you may have, or if you have, more intensive questions about anything in the theater, they can pass you on to any one of our department heads who are very very knowledgeable in their areas.
Okay.
And you can always just stop by. Right. The box office is open. Anybody that wants to come by the theater, it's 173 Main Street in Manasquan, and you can always come on into the box office, stop by, and come and see us.
All right. Thank you so much, Pam Ward, Executive Director of the Algonquin. And Pam, please do me a favor and be careful when you're flying in low-flying airplanes. We don't want you jumping out anymore, okay?
Okay, well, we'll see how the week goes.
All right, we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Jeremy.
All right, be right back after this.